In 2022, the US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, pushing abortion to the front of the national zeitgeist. As I am both a man and apathetic to politics, whether or not it should be legal is not of great importance to the points I want to raise in this video, and as such, I will not be aligning with any political party or giving a personal opinion on abortion. My aim is simply to lay out the ethical quandary that is abortion, to discuss whether a mother has a moral right to terminate a pregnancy, and if so, at what point the fetus moves from being terminable to interminable. I will present two arguments which cover either side of the pro-life versus pro-choice debate, and then it is left up to you to decide which makes more sense. I will re-emphasize that I am not taking a political viewpoint on abortion, and I implore you to leave your politics behind you and instead think of the ethical arguments raised by each author. Despite the over 50-year fight for abortion rights in the United States, abortion is not a purely recent issue. The first evidence of abortion was found to be from Egyptian civilization in 1550 BCE, and there is evidence of women and priests being punished in India for attempting abortions, often through brutal and dangerous methods to carry them out. In Assyrian law, there is at least one recorded case of the death penalty being handed down to a woman for carrying out an abortion. Many people in the United States cite the Bible as a source of anti-abortion rhetoric, yet no direct mention is made of abortion in the entire Bible. The one passing mention, an accidental abortion, in Exodus 21:22-25, the fetus is viewed as property of the mother, and she would be given a financial reimbursement for the loss, perhaps signifying a less harsh approach. Since ancient times, the issue of abortion has plagued religious leaders, politicians, and philosophers, with each pointing to different values as reasons for its ethicality. Just as there are waves of pro- and anti-abortion sentiment that can be seen in the last 40 years or so in the United States, there are ebbs and flows to the philosophical thinking surrounding abortion. There are two specific philosophical papers which I believe show a comprehensive overview of the ethics of the abortion issue as it stands today. The first is by Michael Tooley, titled Abortion and Infanticide, which gives an argument for abortion being morally permissible, as well as infanticide to a degree. Tooley, in his article, begins by creating what he calls a self-consciousness requirement in order to have moral value. It involves a self-conscious creature, which is a creature that possesses a sense of self as a continuing subject of experiences, basically a person once they can start talking and forming memories. The second piece of his argument is the definition of a right. He believes a right is a prima facie obligation for another not to stand in the way or deprive another of their desires. Therefore, when Tooley says A has a right to X, it can be interpreted as A is a subject of continuing experiences who is capable of desiring X, and if that desire is realized, then others are under a prima facie obligation to not deprive A of X. As it applies to a right to life, this argument can be simplified to A is a subject of experiences and other mental states. A is capable of desiring to continue as a subject of experiences and other mental states, and if A does desire to continue to exist as such an entity, then others are under a prima facie obligation to not prevent him from doing so. Having defined the argument at its core, it is now time to apply it to the real-world situation of a pregnant mother and the fetus within her. According to this definition of having a right to life, the mother is under no prima facie obligation to not deprive the fetus of life. As the fetus is not a continuing subject of experiences, it is not morally considerable and is not part of the moral equation. If the fetus has a chance to harm the mother's health, Tooley would argue it is not only permissible, but required to abort the fetus, as the fetus is ignoring the prima facie obligation afforded to the mother in order to keep living as a continuing subject of experiences. There are several rebuttals to this argument, and they work to narrow Tooley's definition of a right further, to the definition, A has a right to X insofar as they desire it, or would desire it if otherwise unable to. This is where you may think, wait, this would mean a fetus has a right to life because it would desire it even though it is unable. However, this becomes a potentiality problem. The potentiality problem argues that no fetus should be aborted because it has the potential to become a full, morally considerable being. The issue with this is that much more will fall into the realm of moral considerability to the point where it is not reasonable. For example, if an egg and sperm have the potential to be a full-grown human, it would be morally wrong to allow for a woman's menstrual cycle or male masturbation, as it eliminates the potential life of a child, leading to an argument that is far too reaching, and so it is ignored on the grounds of it being far too generalized. Therefore, many disregard this argument and allow Tories to stand firm. When reapplied to right to life, the same conclusions are reached, as a fetus is simply a potential human and is therefore not afforded any of the prima facie obligations of others. Using this ethical framework, it would be morally permissible for a mother to abort their fetus up to the point when it becomes a continuing subject of experiences, aka forming memories and talking. This view of abortion falls clearly within the pro-choice realm of abortion politics. It allows mothers to terminate pregnancy up to and even after birth to a certain extent. A much more pro-life argument is that raised by Kenneth Goodpaster in his article on being morally considerable, which argues that the only necessary condition for a right is being alive. Goodpaster makes a considerable negative argument that neither sentience, the capacity to feel pleasure and pain, or the interest principle, another ethical theory of when abortion is permissible, is a necessary condition when considering morality. The argument against sentience was one based on doing harm. All beings have the capacity to be harmed and to benefit. A bacteria can be harmed in the same way a human can be harmed, leading to a clear reaction if uncared for. Therefore, the argument excludes nothing and is pointless, as all beings are able to be harmed in a way that reaches the sentience requirement. The argument against interests is similar to the argument against sentience, in that all beings have interests. For example, a single-celled bacteria reproducing is an example of a bacteria having an interest in continuing a species. Not only single-celled organisms, but all beings have interests. For example, a tree has an interest in getting sunlight, which is evident in the fact that trees grow tall and spread their leaves out to maximize time in the sun. This can be seen as a concerted interest in staying alive. Therefore, these beings are morally considerable. The question, when it comes to abortion then, is when is a fetus or newborn alive? The simple answer would be that if a single-celled organism is morally considerable, then it would follow that a fetus would be morally considerable from the moment of conception. Goodpaster relatively successfully disproved two necessary conditions for moral considerability, and in doing so has reduced the bar to effectively nothing. If an organism is alive, it is morally considerable if Goodpaster's logic is followed. When applied to the right to life then, a fetus is morally considerable when it is alive, which by many people is considered to be conception. This argument does lead to a more scientific argument based on when a fetus is truly alive and whether a fetus must be independent to be considered so, but it is not what we are here to discuss. These two arguments are on the opposite ends of the spectrum without a doubt. Many people have written many articles which look to find the balance between these two extremes from a philosophical sense, and there are many which provide solid arguments which are employed by both pro-choice and pro-life politicians. But those political beefs are not what these articles are written to endorse. These pieces are written in order to get someone to think, to find the string of logic and to follow it to its conclusion, even if it means being an advocate of infanticide or for single-cell rights, simply because it is the next logical step in the argument. So while society argues about whether abortion should be legal or illegal, I implore you to think about why you believe what you do. Is it because you believe in a mother's choice, regardless of the moral impact of depriving a fetus of its life? Or do you believe that every baby should be born because Exodus 20:13 states, "You shall not murder"? Whichever way you may think, find a basis for your belief and logic, such that you can be challenged and can provide a good defense of your viewpoint, and you will be much more fulfilled and galvanized by the beliefs that you hold. Thank you for watching.